guys, welcome to Priceless B Movies. I'm your host, Colin Price, and it's come down to it. I haven't done one of these in a long time because, for about 3 or 4 years, I took kind of a hiatus from this page altogether. I was going through a divorce, among other things. I didn't really have the time, energy, or inclination to be doing videos. But now that I'm back, and especially because of what a terrific year this has been for film, I am so happy to be able to do a top 10 video for you. This is going to be my top 10 movies of 2024. Just a couple of caveats before we start here. One, I am not your normal, typical run-of-the-mill YouTube critic. I don't monetize these videos. I don't get paid for anything that I do on YouTube. I do this because I genuinely love movies. I love talking about them. This is purely a hobby for me. So I don't get to go see every single movie. I go see, maybe 2 movies a month, if I'm lucky. And so there might be some movies that are highly regarded or are on a lot of other critics' lists that aren't going to be on mine simply because I wanted to see something else. And for those of you who know me and who follow this page, you're going to know that my tastes tend to run more toward horror, crime, action, comedy, things of that nature. So movies like Wicked, Sing Sing, Inside Out 2, you're not going to find that on here. That's for someone else's list. Also, because I only see so many movies and because I only post every so often, just because a movie's on this list does not mean that I have reviewed it at any point. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't think that anything that actually made it onto my top 10 list has a full video review on my page. So you're just going to have to go with that and forgive me for it. Also, there are a couple of movies, 2 in particular, that I want to give a special note to. These are 2 films that I know are getting a lot of praise, and everything I hear about them is fantastic, but just not my thing. Okay, one of them is Smile 2. I know that Smile was a huge hit when it came out. I saw it. I wasn't a fan of it. I didn't like how much. I kind of felt it was like a ripoff of The Ring, the way it was structured. And also just on a personal level, just me, myself, I didn't like the connotations. I didn't like what it was saying about mental health. And I didn't like the fact that the main message of the movie is that trauma is unbeatable and there's no point in trying to get over things that hurt you and that are emotionally. I just didn't like that whole message of the film. And because of that, I had no real interest in seeing Smile 2. I hear that Naomi Scott is fantastic and that there are a lot of very effective scares in the movie. Mazel tov, it's not for me. The other film that I want to mention is Dune Chapter 2. When I was growing up, my father, he loved Dune. I saw the 80s film, and I saw the Sci-Fi Channel miniseries around the 2000s, early 2000s, and I'm just tired of Dune. I'm sorry, I'm tired of it. I did see Dune Chapter 1. I thought it was very well done. Denis Villeneuve is a terrific filmmaker. I just I didn't have enough interest to check out the second movie. Also, before I start, don't worry, I will. It's coming. There are 3 honorable mentions. The first is Beetlejuice. I did have a good time with this one. If we were going to get a sequel to the 1988 classic, I'm glad that it was as entertaining as this one was. It didn't make my list because it does still feel like there's a lot in it that's kind of jam-packed. You could tell that there were a lot of different scripts for this and that there are a lot of different ideas because it does feel, I don't want to say that there's too much stuffed into it, but there's a lot going on when I would have really rather had the main focus just be on Winona Ryder and then Michael Keaton's Beetlejuice trying to get back with her. Also, the character of Rory, played by Justin Theroux. We've seen this character in other movies before. We've seen him in other Tim Burton movies before. He's basically like the stepdad in Dark Shadows. He's in with the wealthy family just to be a dick and get their money. And there's nothing particularly interesting or funny about Rory in Beetlejuice, or how he's played. That whole character brought the movie down for me, so it's not on this list. But I did find the scenes without him to be incredibly fun. Second honorable mention is going to be Longlegs. I know a lot of people loved this movie. I was super hyped about it. I really, really wanted to see it. And when I did, it was all right. It was all right. Maika Monroe gave a terrific performance. So did Nicolas Cage with his extremely limited screen time. But I don't know, man. I felt that it was very well acted. It was very well shot. And outside of that, I can't really think of anything that great about it. I like the idea of it. And I give it credit for having the guts halfway through to kind of switch genres and go in this whole other direction. At the same time, I just feel like it could have been worked out a little better. The segue into the horror and supernatural elements could have been handled better. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. I did very much enjoy it, and I forgot to mention also Alicia Witt, one of the best supporting performances of the year. Just not good enough to make the list. And finally, Speak No Evil. This is a remake of a film that I've seen twice, which I think is one more time than most people have watched it. The ending of that original film is so bleak. It's so disturbing. It is so fucked up. That's right, I don't monetize these videos. Fuck YouTube. It is a fucked up movie. However, I was really excited to see the remake, especially because James McAvoy is a genius. He's like one of the most underrated actors in film today, because everyone's like, oh yeah, that guy, he's Professor X. No, he's so much more than that. This guy is a treasure. And anytime he's going to be in a thriller from here on out, I'm on board. All right, now that we've gotten all of that crap out of the way, let's start with number 10. VHS Beyond. I've been a fairly big fan of the VHS movies since the beginning. However, there's something, and I know not everyone will agree with me on this, but there's something kind of interesting about the VHS movies to me, which is that like every other one is really, really good, and every other one is really, really bad. Like, the first one, there's 2 really good shorts in it. The rest of it I didn't really care for. The second one is the best in the franchise. Then there's the third one, which we don't talk about Bruno. Then when they brought it back, the fourth one was like, I know a lot of people loved it. I didn't really care for much of it. I thought it was a bunch of interesting ideas, but I didn't really like the way that most of them were executed. Then 99 came out, and I was like, that one's really good. And then 85, I think, was the one that came out last year. I really didn't care for it all. So I was so excited for this year. I'm like, it's every other one. This one's going to be good. And I was wrong. It wasn't good. It was wonderful. There wasn't a short in this VHS film that I did not enjoy. My favorite was the third one. It was a segment called Live and Let Dive, where a group of people are going skydiving for one of them. It's like his birthday. They're going skydiving, and then there's this alien attack that causes the plane to go down. They all free fall into this orchard where they're all attacked by these aliens. It was so fun. It was this little, like, I don't even think this one was 15 or 20 minutes long, but it was so cool the way they did it. The CG on the aliens looked great. I loved the creature design as well. There's this great shot where one of them is like lost his leg, but he's dead already and he's in free fall. So you just see the body falling with this red stream like shooting up in the air seemingly. There's some awesome shots in this. The whole movie's great. In fact, if I wanted to say there was a weak link, there's one, I think it's like the second short, is called Dream Girl. I wasn't crazy about it, but I still enjoyed it for what it was. Altogether, this is the best anthology horror film of the year, hands down. Number 9, and this one surprised me. I actually think there's going to be some people who turn this video off after I say this, but number 9 was Beverly Hills Cop Axel F. I love the Beverly Hills Cop movie. Even the third one I don't think is really as terrible as everyone makes it out to be. It's not great. It doesn't really hold a candle to the first 2. But I just love these movies, you know. I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm a guy, but I really love, like, the buddy cop action comedy genre, whether it's, you know, those movies or Lethal Weapon or Rush Hour or, you know, any of the other Shane Black films, you know, Long Kiss Goodnight, The Last Boy Scout, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. These are all movies that I really love. I just think it's a formula that works very reliably. Now, we hadn't seen Eddie Murphy as Axel Foley since 1993, so what were they going to bring to this? Well, they went back to basics. This story is structured very much like the first one. You had a great supporting cast, Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and you had Judge Reinhold and Paul Aston, rest in peace, back in their respective roles. You had Kevin Bacon as a bad guy who should have had like a huge mustache for as often as he was twirling it. You know, there's nothing remarkable about this movie. There's nothing remarkable or innovative, or it's just a fun cop comedy. And I don't really think we've had a lot of those lately. Number 8 is going to be Furiosa. I know that a lot of guys out there with very tiny penises were very mad about this movie when it came out. I had a blast with it. Anya Taylor-Joy takes over the Charlize Theron role for Mad Max Fury Road. Well, for the last half of it, she does. I can't actually remember the name of the actress who plays Furiosa when she's a child for the first, 45 minutes or so of the movie. But Anya Taylor-Joy plays the character. Chris Hemsworth, oh my God, how good was he in this? This is a career best performance from him. There's a scene, without getting too far into spoilers, there's a scene relatively late in the film where he is being exceptionally cruel to a couple of characters. And he orders this horrible thing be done, and then he jumps up on a truck, takes a drink, and the camera kind of zooms in on him, and you see in his eyes that even he is kind of... even he is not feeling totally okay about what he is doing. It's like he's questioning his own orders that he's given to have these people harmed. Like, even he is totally about the levels of depravity in this act. And then, some time passes, it cuts back to him, and he just says, "That's it, stop, I'm bored." But if you look at his face, it's just kind of like he's saying, "I can't even do this anymore." This is such a terrific layered performance from him. If this is the last Mad Max related film that we get, I'm good with that. But man, this was a good film. Number 7 is going to be Late Night with the Devil. David Dastmalchian is a terrific actor. Ever since I saw him in The Dark Knight, I've kind of had my eye on him, noting when I see him in a movie, oh, it's him. And, it's great, especially last year we had Last Voyage of the Demeter and The Boogeyman, where he showed up in supporting roles but gave reliably terrific performances. It's so cool to see him leading a film because he really is such a dynamic performer. And in this film, he plays Jack Delroy. He's running a late night talk show. He's trying to compete with Johnny Carson. He's not doing so great at it. And then he decides he's going to have this comeback Halloween special where he brings on a psychic, a denier, and then, presumably a possessed young girl. Sounds smart. I don't really have to go too much further into the plot to let you know what kind of movie this is going to be. But if I had to sum it up in one word, I would just say fun. This isn't a movie that's trying to be the most disturbing or controversial film of the year, although their use of AI might have contributed to that anyway. But I had such a blast with this concept, with the film, with the way that it played out. It really does feel like you're just watching this hour-and-a-half talk show and just watching everything go wrong that possibly can. You can see that there was a tremendous amount of love for the material and a tremendous amount of effort that went into making this feel authentic. That is why it is on this list. Number 6, we have Abigail. The prime example of why trailers shouldn't spoil shit. But I laughed my ass off. Abigail is about a group of criminals who kidnap this little girl and hold her for ransom. And oh my God, I'm tempted. I'm so tempted to just say what happens and what's up with this little girl and what's up with this house that they're in. But if you've seen the trailer, you already know this should have been the best kept secret. And it's so frustrating because when you look at the movie and you look at the first maybe 35 or 40 minutes, they set up that this little girl's dad is a criminal figure and he has this enforcer who is who's terrifying, who's this urban legend among criminals. And if they had just played up this Kaiser Soze kind of angle in the trailers and not given away the reveal in the trailer, people would have still gone and seen the movie and it would have been all the better for it. I don't know offhand what studio was behind promoting Abigail, but y'all screwed up. Having said that, this was one of the most fun movies of the year. I was not a Melissa Barrera fan before I saw this movie. The new Scream films, I'm not a fan. And I hadn't really seen her in anything else, but I really did enjoy her in this. Also, Dan Stevens from The Guest back in 2014, one of my favorite thrillers of that era. Oh my gosh, after this movie, I am totally convinced. Get Dan Stevens to play Freddy Krueger. If we're going to reboot Freddy Krueger, get this guy. Radio Silence, I loved Ready or Not. I love Abigail. What are you going to do next? Throw it at me. I am eager to see it. Number 5 is going to be Terrifier 3. That's right, it's the Christmas movie. It's the Art the Clown Christmas movie. It's the movie where we have one of the best sequences of the year where Art the Clown meets Santa Claus. Need I say more? I've been a huge fan of the Art the Clown character ever since All Hallows Eve when I watched that online, I think it was 2012, 2013. The way that character has evolved and the success that this franchise has seen is so admirable and is so worth talking about. David Howard Thornton as Art the Clown has taken the best parts of Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger and rolled them into one. Whereas Freddy Krueger is kind of the loudmouth, jokey guy who's still threatening, and Michael Myers is the silent, never speaks, blank-faced villain, just the evil out there. You've combined the two, and now you have a villain who's in black and white costume, but doesn't talk, but is still expressive and funny as hell. Throw in Lauren Lavera and Elliot Fulham returning in their roles from part 2, and then a lot of really groovy kills. I know everyone says the chainsaw scene, yes, that was awesome, but my personal favorite was the guy getting his head degloved. If you've seen the movie, you know what I'm talking about. When I saw this, I saw it in the theater, and there was a guy who threw up 3 or 4 rows in front of me when it got to that scene. I don't know, that just made it better for me because I was laughing my ass off. Sorry, guy who threw up in the AMC theater in Champaign during Terrifier 3, my bad. I thought that was the funniest thing I'd seen in a theater all year. Number 4, and this was a real surprise, The First Omen. I'm not that big a fan of 70s horror, I guess. The Exorcist, I'm not that big a fan of. Sorry. The Omen is another one of it. Just 70s horror, especially satanic horror in general. I just feel like that was a theme. There were a lot of those in the 70s, and a lot of them are considered to be classics. I've seen The Omen. It's a good movie. I'm not going to say it's a bad film, but it's never really been my thing. And when I started hearing that a prequel to The Omen, which already has 2 or 3 sequels and a TV movie, critics were saying this is one of the scariest movies of the last few years. I'm like, what? Really? And then of course I saw it. And now I can say that The First Omen is one of the most frightening films I've ever seen. People say scary films. It's like, okay, well, what does that mean? Scary as in, it puts you on edge, you're kind of gripping your seats. But when I say frightening, I mean there are sequences and images in this movie that made it hard for me to sleep after I saw it. And this movie goes all the way with the body horror. And if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I mean. This movie had guts. It had a lot of guts. And Nell Tiger Free, can we talk about her for a second? What a tremendous physical performance she gives to this movie. The scene after the car crashes and she gets out, and that's all I'm going to say. If you've seen the movie, you know. Number 3 is going to be Deadpool and Wolverine. The 3 films that are the top 3 on this list, I don't want to say that they are on there because of nostalgia, but my childhood and my upbringing didn't exactly hurt my enjoyment of these films. When I was 11 or 12, the first Blade came out in theaters, and I saw the trailers. Oh my gosh, how awesome was the trailer for Blade?
Wesley Snipes, Stephen Dorff.
You're one of them, aren't you?
No, I'm something else. Blade.
But then the movie came out and it got stamped with an R rating. My parents were very religious. There was no way I was going to get to see it in the theater. I was so let down. I was so heartbroken. I'd been looking forward for months to seeing this movie. And then my brother Corey, who has passed on, God rest, he kind of snuck me in. So the first Blade was the first R-rated film that I got to see in a theater. and it warped me. It blew my mind seeing, that amount of gore, that amount of action and intensity on the big screen for the first time. It's an experience that I'll never forget as long as I live. Oh, and then when Blade shows up in this one, people are going to say, spoiler, spoiler. Who hasn't seen Deadpool and Wolverine already? Personal note, that scene made my year. That is my favorite scene of the entire year, is when Blade comes out among Jennifer Garner as Elektra and Channing Tatum finally getting to be Gambit. Oh my gosh, it was just this immense feeling of bliss in my heart seeing that. I wish my brother had been around to see it as well. That aside, man, this was fun. This was a funny movie. Marvel has been on a downhill slope for the last couple of years. Hopefully they take the right lessons from this one. Ryan Reynolds is terrific in the main role, and I think this is one of Hugh Jackman's best performances as Wolverine. That scene where they're in the car, and I'm not even talking about the fight that ensues, that was great, but that monologue he gives where he is just digging into Ryan Reynolds is some of the best acting I've seen in a comic book movie in recent years. This is an incredible film. And then we also got a great villain played by Emma Corrin as Cassandra Nova. She actually shows up later on in this list, but we'll get to that. I have a hard time finding any fault in this movie. This is a movie that I have seen multiple times by now, and I wouldn't mind watching it again as soon as I finish this video. Number 2 is going to be Nosferatu. I just talked about Emma Corrin being Cassandra Nova in Deadpool and Wolverine. She is also a supporting actress in this film, playing Anna Harding. Robert Eggers. I really loved The Witch back in 2015. If you scroll down my reviews, you go down far enough, you'll find my review of that one. I really loved it. The Lighthouse didn't work for me. The Northman, I got about an hour into it and turned it off. But, I don't know, when I heard he was going to do Nosferatu, that piqued my interest, especially when I learned that it's one of his favorite films, that he did a high school production of it when he was younger. I was like, okay, Nosferatu, well, what do I know about that movie? Here's where I bore you to tears. When I was young, and I have made mention of this in previous videos, when I was young, I loved horror. It all started when I was 4 or 5 years old, and my mom read me a bedtime story called The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. You get where I'm going with this. Ever since then, I have had this intense love of horror, of being scared, of being spooked by something. Well, of course, horror movies were a big deal in the late 80s, early 90s, but because my parents are both very religious, they didn't want me watching Freddy Krueger. They didn't want me watching The Shining. They didn't want me watching anything R-rated. And they had kind of told me, okay, well, if you love horror and you want to get into horror, start from the beginning. Start with the classics. So one of the first horror movies I ever saw was the F.W. Murnau Nosferatu from 1922. And it scared the hell out of me at, I think it was 6 or 7 years old. It scared the hell out of me. I watched it in the basement with my father, and it warped me. It was the first vampire film I'd ever seen. It was one of the scariest films. Still to this day, I'll say one of the scariest films I've ever seen, just because of the impact it had on me back then. Robert Eggers, once again, loved The Witch. Haven't really loved anything else he's done, but I had that feeling that he was going to get it. He was going to get Nosferatu, and he was going to make a spectacle of this film. And I was wrong, because it was better than that. This is the first genuinely scary vampire movie we have had in a long time, and I'm already seeing all these reviews dumping on it, calling it boring, calling it a rehash, calling it, of course it is, that's the point. Nosferatu, the original silent film, was a ripoff of Bram Stoker's Dracula. They made a movie off of the book, and then they were sued for it, and then one copy survived. If you go on Google, there's this, I'm pretty sure this is an urban legend, but there's this really wild story about how F.W. Murnau's wife saved the last copy of the movie. Look it up, and if there's any truth to that, let me know. But we've seen this before. Okay, Nosferatu is the Dracula story, but Next to Bram Stoker's Dracula, directed by Francis Ford Coppola back in 1992, this is the best adaptation of that story that I have seen. That's right. I'm going to be that guy on YouTube who says, I think this is a better film than the 1922 Nosferatu. Come at me. Lily Rose Depp deserves all the awards for her performance, as does Bill Skarsgård. I'm still not even sure if that was really Bill Skarsgård. I saw it in the theater. It might take me some convincing. I'm still not sure that was him. The Blu-ray better come with some extras showing him getting put in the makeup and like behind the scenes, him getting his voice right, whatever. Because at this point, I'm not entirely convinced that was him. But if it was, once again, how the hell does the Academy Awards keep thumbing their nose at horror? And for my number one pick, number one is going to be The Crow. That was a joke. Hey, come back. That was a joke.
I was kidding. I was only kidding.
And number one is going to be Heretic. Once again, hearkening back to my childhood, my parents were both very religious and they were very involved with our church. I was an altar boy, a choir boy. I had Sunday school every Sunday for years. I went to a Catholic high school for my freshman year. That was a huge part of my upbringing. My parents were very involved in the choir. My dad played the organ. My mother was the choir teacher. I spent more time in school and church than your average 4 or 5 kids in the 90s combined. But because of that, I could really appreciate what this movie was trying to do and what it was trying to say. The story revolves around Sophie Thatcher from Boogeyman last year and Chloe East playing 2 Mormon missionaries who go to the home of a character named Mr. Reed, played by Hugh Grant, who brings them in and sits them down. He's very friendly, very cordial at first. I mean, this is Hugh Grant we're talking about, one of the most notoriously charming actors of our era. He sits them down, and then eventually the conversation kind of goes really dark, and he says, you know what? Not only do I already know everything about your religion, and I can prove that it's completely wrong, but more than that, after decades of studying all the different religions, I have found the one true religion. From that point on, the film becomes a series of increasingly dark and sadistic psychological tests that he puts these women through, including one very spooky encounter in the basement of his home. I wish I could say more about this film. This is the horror movie that has come out this year that I recommend to people I know who don't like horror movies. There is not a weak link in this film. This is a perfect thriller. Something tells me that in the coming years, I will be ranking Heretic up there with Seven, with Silence of the Lambs, with The Usual Suspects, with the first Saw, as one of the all-time great thriller films. Heretic is the movie to watch if you are a fan of horror, if you are a fan of holy horror in particular, like The First Omen or Immaculate, or even if you just want to see Hugh Grant give the worst possible impersonation of Jar Jar Binks ever put on film. This is the one for you. Highly recommended. Check out Heretic as soon as you possibly can. And those are my top 10 favorite movies of 2024. I can't wait to do this again next year. Guys, this has been such an amazing year for film, especially horror. I think this has been the best year for horror movies since 1999? That's 25 years ago. Well, I'm 38 now. So when I'm 60, I'll be doing another one of these. Boy, that's going to be fun. Thanks for watching and stay tuned for more Priceless B movies.